Battle of the Network shows. Join Rick Brooks and Mike Kogel as they explore the TV of the 70s and 80s through hand-picked episodes of their favorite and not-so-favorite series.
Welcome to Battle of the Network shows. I'm Mike.
And I'm Rick. Hello, everyone.
And today we're talking about a show that actually a friend of the show, Dan, suggested many seasons ago. I think right after we did Run Joe Run. But we wanted to give a little space between dog shows. So this is the Canadian show, Littlest Hobo.
Yes, it's good to be back in the world of Canadian TV, and special thanks to all of our friends from Canada.
Yes.
And once again, we want to thank them.
Yes. You know, I probably on the Run Joe Run show, I might have expressed my reservations about sort of animal-based shows and movies. I mean, I love my dog. I love dogs in general. But certainly in the last, 10, 20 years, we've had a lot of movies about dogs specifically, quite often with some famous actor doing voiceover as giving us the thoughts of the dog.
Right.
And I always look askance at those. And, of course, we can't forget Disney's Snow Dogs.
Right. I do know your well-stated objection to big-name actors taking away voice roles from established dog actors.
Exactly. I don't want to hear Kevin Costner creaking his way through voiceover when a dog could be doing it.
Yeah.
But you know what would happen? It would be Kevin Costner's dog.
Yeah. You know, you're right.
Nepo dogs.
It's a rigged system.
Yes.
What can you do?
This show, I wasn't aware of this show at all until Dan had originally mentioned it. I'm not even sure how he was aware of it. I know he mentioned a specific episode. It's not the one we're doing that features a rather gawky teenage Mike Myers as like the third or fourth guest star. But
do you want me to mention a show where The Littlest Hobo has come up before that might have inspired Dan to recommend it?
CTV?
Well, not what I was thinking of. I'm thinking of a CTV show called Corner Gas, where they did a whole episode based on the idea that one of the main characters thinks he sees the Littlest Hobo. He thinks that he's wandered into Dog River and spends the episode trying to prove that it is the Littlest Hobo.
Well, the only thing I look at more askance than dog movies is Corner Gas.
Well,
No.
I, for the record, love Corner Gas, but
I know.
yes.
That sounds good. What I wanted to say, despite all those reservations, I find this show delightful. We'll get into it more, but
yeah, it's charming in its way, and
yes,
it's an easy watch, and I can see how it would have like broad-based appeal. It's family friendly.
Although oddly, there are a lot of noirish aspects to it. Hobo gets involved in a lot of sort of crime-related things.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw him start a gang war.
Whoa.
Between Sheldon Leonard and another guy. Yeah, and help Alan Hale Jr. stop some thieves and from getting framed. You know, and this episode features some no good punks.
Yes, well, it's a rude awakening, but I have learned from watching this that crime exists in Canada as well as it does in the United States of America. It's kind of disappointing to find that out, really. But
yes, but also leash laws apparently do not.
No.
Yeah, so it's there's just something about it. I don't know. Now, you know, I enjoy this little bit of the Wikipedia description, which is that the dog is often referred to by the name Hobo or by names given by temporary human companions. His origins, motivation, and ultimate destination are never explained on screen. I'm glad that they weren't.
Yeah, I kind of like that too.
But it does seem like he might be supernatural.
Yeah.
Because he understands situation far more than I think even a human wouldn't pick up on it. He right away knows where he needs to be. It's a little bit like Highway to Heaven, you know.
Yeah, that's a good comparison, really.
He's where he needs to be for as long as he needs to be there to help people solve their problems or fall in love, whatever it is, and then he moves on.
Yeah, it combines the wandering aspects of shows like The Fugitive, The Incredible Hulk, and
yes,
Run Joe Run with the more supernatural element of something like Highway to Heaven.
Yeah,
where he's actively going out to help people.
Exactly, yeah. And, I mean, he does all these physical things, which obviously we see them happen usually. He's capable of doing them because the dog actor has been trained to do it. But, would a real dog always know how to do these things? I don't know. Would a real dog know what a ledger looks like? Even if it's explained, kind of books. or know what videotapes do. I don't know, but it's okay once you
Yeah.
buy into it. But that's like you said, like the Incredible Hulk, the Fugitive. He's the only consistent cast member, and then they're guest stars. Quite often American guest stars.
Right. And I was thinking, wow, they must, looking at some of the episodes, I was thinking, wow, I guess like every Canadian actor of the time appeared in it. And then I actually started thinking of all the Canadian actors that weren't in it, you know? So it's like, well, I'm
Yeah,
not going to say that.
right.
Like, I don't think William Shatner's in it.
Or the CTP people,
Right, right.
but probably most of the other ones.
Yeah. Yes. Well, speaking of our encyclopedic knowledge of Canadian television, one thing I think that helps my enjoyment of this, The Littlest Hobo, is its accessibility. I say that because, like, well, the show apparently is on CTV's website. CTV is private as opposed to the CBC. Privately owned is the CTV, and they have it on their website, but it's geo-blocked. Okay, but fortunately, it's not hard to find the episodes online, and hopefully, it will remain so for a while. I say that because the last purely Canadian show we did was Beachcombers, right? Several seasons ago.
Mm-hmm.
And Beachcombers, we found a pretty good assortment of episodes, but I have a feeling that that's the kind of show that part of its appeal was like getting to know the characters and, and sort of like living with it for a while. But availability of it was a lot spottier, certainly when we did the series. So it was kind of hard to really get a great feel for, a show with that many episodes. Whereas The Littlest Hobo here, I mean, you and I are kind of dipping in. We're picking out guest stars, all kinds of different plot situations. And I think between the two of us, we can get a pretty good feel of what the show is like.
Yeah. You know what else I like about it being Canadian is that it's unabashedly.
Certainly.
Other than some of the guest stars. But,
yeah.
People have different accents.
Mm-hmm.
It is gentle. I don't know. You just get to see a lot of Toronto.
You do. And it's got that kind of, lower budget look, shot on videotape. And at the time, it's funny because at the time, like in the 1980s, that might not have appealed to me so much. I don't, we might have talked about this before the other shows, but now it actually makes it look kind of distinctive.
I think so.
And actually, the location shooting really makes it look distinctive.
Yes.
Even if it's not the fanciest cinematography or anything, and the production value is not expansive, it looks different than all the other shows that are glossier and actually shot in Canada now.
I'll come back to that because there's an element to this particular episode that comes from that, I think. So this was on it was on, there was a version on in the 60s and it came back in the 70s.
Right. Yeah, there was a 1958 movie, then it ran 63 to 65 in the first run syndication, and then again 1979 to 1985 with the revival. And I don't know offhand like what kind of syndication presence it had in the United States. I mean, I've seen some people comment that they didn't really see it, but we know of course that people would have seen it on in some of the border states would have seen it on Canadian television stations. I don't know how extensive it was actually syndicated here in the United States, in its own right.
And it's got a pretty fun theme song.
It does, yeah. Iconic song, apparently, yeah.
Yeah. So a country-ish song about, wandering from place to place. It's interesting. There's one, the horns that play kind of at the end of the song.
Okay.
That reminds me of like a Rankin Bass kind of song.
Interesting.
And like we said, a lot of guest stars. I guess it was pretty popular in Canada.
Yeah, and each episode is a half hour. So they're very tidy stories, in and out, and get to see the hobo do his thing every episode.
So he's played mostly by a dog named London, who's a very distinctive looking German Shepherd, and was trained by a guy named Charles Eisenman.
Charles Eisenman.
Chuck P. Eisenman, who wrote a lot of books on training dogs, and in the Alan Hale Jr. episode, you actually see him on camera training other dogs.
Oh, nice.
London is, I think because he's distinctive looking, but also because of what we see him do in the show, he's a friendlier looking German Shepherd than you might sometimes think German Shepherd.
Yeah, good point. Normally you might associate it more with intimidation. Not so in this case.
Yeah, he's a very empathetic dog, which most dogs are, but he's more so. As you said, very good at opening doors, climbing through windows, carrying objects places, pawing people.
Very resourceful and good tactical mind for foiling criminals.
Yes.
I think is his most impressive attribute.
So, do we want to go ahead and get into the episode?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. The episode we picked is called Small Change, and it premiered February 7th, 1985 in Canada. Now, I do not know what the CBC had on that evening, nor what was on the rest of CTV's primetime lineup. But would you like to know what was on the networks here in the United States on that night?
Sure.
Well, it turns out it was a Thursday night, and boy, Littlest Hobo had some tough competition because we had on NBC, we had The Cosby Show, we had The Family Ties. I'm starting to sound Canadian. We had The Family Ties, Cheers, Night Court, and Hill Street Blues. So, that's must-see TV right there, right? The early days of it. What a lineup there, right? Yeah. And CBS had Magnum PI, Simon and Simon, and Knots Landing. Now, that goes to show you, I mean, they were at war there this time, in Thursday. This is right when Cosby Show was just, starting to become massively huge, and I think CBS was still adjusting, but those are two big lineups. And then you got ABC, which had a remake of The Bad Seed, TV movie remaking the old movie The Bad Seed, and an episode of 2020 that, interestingly enough, had a segment on pit bulls.
Well, this one centers around an arcade, and that might be one of the main reasons we picked it.
Yes, I think that's fair to say.
It doesn't have any notable guest stars Americanized.
No, I did look in the cast. So apparently Ted Dykstra, who I believe plays the main human protagonist, or the deaf protagonist, he's got quite a distinguished career, including... Here he played Daniel Tiger's dad on the Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood spin-off animated series. But okay. Just looking at his resume, he's got all sorts of acclaim for various roles in Canada. So good for him. But yes, as far as name value, I was very curious about the person that plays Nick, who we'll talk about, and he does not have a big resume.
Okay. Yeah, but like we said, some of the other guest stars, Saul Rubinek, Jack Gilford, Forrest Kelly, Ray Walston, Maury Amsterdam, Michael
Maury
Ironside.
Amsterdam.
Yeah,
I gotta see that one.
Patrick McNee, Abe Vigoda, John Vernon, Chris Makepeace, Vic Morrow.
Ah, yes, Vic Morrow is in the one with Michael Ironside.
Henry Gibson, John Carradine, Leslie Nielsen, Anne Francis.
That's pretty impressive.
It is. But in this one, as we said, not anyone too well known, at least at the time. But it opens with this young man. Learn very late in the episode his name Terry. He's scrounging in a trash can, and Hobo, we'll call him Hobo, is watching, and there's a truck backing towards him. Terry doesn't hear it because he's deaf, it turns out. So Hobo grabs him by his carrier bag and drags him out of the way. And then the guy moves on and he pulls some empty bottles out of his bag to a corner store, exchange them. And then right down the street from there, we see there's a line outside another place of kids and a young woman who's a mime performing for them.
Yeah.
And Terry joins that line and he's holding a quarter. But this is the other thing I was going to mention that these kids seem very real 80s kids.
Yeah.
Other than maybe the two punks, nobody's particularly, dressed in quote unquote 80s fashion. They're just they just look like teenagers.
That's a good point. I agree with that.
It looks like the 80s, but it doesn't look ridiculous.
Yes.
Probably they just pulled these kids from the neighborhood or something.
Maybe. Yeah, that's cool. That's a good observation. I think you're spot on with that.
And then this grumpy old guy shows up and starts lecturing all these kids as he opens up his arcade. So his name is Nick, and he looks a little bit like Santa Claus. But he's happy it's his last day for some reason. And he tells the mime to go get a real job.
Yeah, which is kind of pretty funny. That was really uncalled for, but I did laugh at that. Now,
I mean, he means well, I think, in that case. He's saying, because he even tells you just to find a better location.
Yeah, well, so what do you think about that? I mean, on one hand, the people, it's clearly kind of a captive audience because, they're not really interested, but they're just waiting to get in there. But on the other hand, they might have pockets full of quarters already. Right. And, I guess maybe she could be thinking, hey, maybe they'll drop a few in the hat here.
Yeah.
They certainly don't look like a receptive audience, though, when we see her performing for them.
No. Yeah, and it's kind of weird that this guy hates the business that he owns so much. And his customers.
Yeah.
We learn later that he used to have a hardware store, barely broke even, and he made enough money in 3 years that he's going to be able to retire.
Yeah, I'm curious about that transition from hardware store to arcade, how that went down.
Yes.
Yeah, what a transition, but he made
Although
it.
I think there were probably lots of people who did that, sort of like people who actually make money from podcasts or YouTube or, jumping on the thing. Well, that's making money right now. Let's do that.
Right. Like when...
Let's open a vape store.
Yes.
Yes.
Or like when people would open like baseball card stores for a while or bigger, comic book stores or things like that, kind of jumping on it. And it's pretty smart by Nick. He's actually cashing out before, arcades go away.
Yeah, it does seem like he's getting forced to shut down too by the school board.
That was a bizarre thing, yeah. The school board... apparently.
Yeah, talk about socialism. I don't know.
Yeah, that might be a little bit of overreach of your the school board if they can shut down an arcade. Maybe the school board lobbied somebody and they decided to kick out an apparently thriving business
Yeah, I guess
here.
maybe it's close to the school.
Yeah, it seems like it is because it seems like everybody hangs out there like during their free
Yeah,
periods or whatever. I don't know how that works
right.
either. They go back and forth, is what I'm trying to say.
But arcade's pretty cool. It has flashing lights, and I don't understand. It has arcade noises above and beyond the video game noises,
Right, like
like a loop.
Nick, who was driven crazy by the game's presence, has added more sound effects
Right.
to supplement the games to give more ambiance, I guess.
And a black light that he hates.
Yeah,
So our Terry comes in and he's playing a game, and there's this other guy who I think his name ends up being Mitch, and he's getting change from Nick, and chatting with him. And that's how we learn a lot of this. But at the same time, he's watching everything. Seems suspicious. And Nick mentions that Terry comes in, plays for 3 hours on one quarter, and then he sees Hobo, who had come in with Terry, and he unplugs the game on the guy, and then talking to him, and of course Terry can't hear him. But it seems like I'm not gonna say he lives on the street, but I guess he hasn't ever gotten much help for his condition or teaching on how to function or tell people that he's deaf, and so nobody seems to know.
right, right. And what about the ethics of Nick pulling the plug in the middle of a paying customer? He says he doesn't want, I forget how he phrased it, he doesn't want people like squatting there and, staying there, but
Hey,
it's his quarter. I mean, it's not, and he's also like, it's not like other kids are flocking to get on that machine. I guess
Right.
Nick just wants everybody to leave. He just seems to want to clear out his business every now and then so he can have some time for himself, I guess.
He does want everyone to leave, but he would rather be making, having people pump quarters into the games than
That makes
one
sense.
guy win.
But
Wasn't that
it
a
seems
thing,
like there's,
didn't people back then get in trouble for rigging games so that they
right.
couldn't be played for a long time?
I mean, I think there's been a big tradition of that, like in pinball and video games, but it just seems like there'd be a more elegant solution than physically yanking the plug from the machine in the middle
Right.
of somebody playing.
Yeah, Nick is not one who strikes me as elegant.
No, no, he's not.
He gets to the point. But Terry leaves, and Hobo, he shoos Hobo away. But then Mitch and this other punk Carver are standing outside, and they're planning this robbery. Come back at the end of the day. They figure he'll have $1,000 by the end. And Hobo's taking all this in. And then inside, Nick kicks everyone out because it's time to go to school. And then the punks are talking somewhere else, and they hear some rattling, and it's Terry getting more bottles. They kind of rough him up a little bit until Hobo shows up and distracts them. Terry runs away, and they chase him, and Hobo chases them. And then he ends up going and finding the mime and taking her bag so that she'll come and see what's happening. And she overhears what's all this going on.
Isn't that the lesson that Mr. Rogers used to teach young kids? Is like, when you're in trouble, look around for the mimes. They're the ones that will help you. If you're ever in a bad situation. Clearly, Hobo was paying attention to that lesson.
Oh, yeah. But again, she overhears the entire plan, and then they see Hobo and run away. But before they run away, or Terry runs away again, jumps a fence, hurts his leg, and the punks catch up with him and then throw him in a dumpster full of dirt. And I guess they hit him on the head. So then we see the mime, and she's at the arcade talking to the cop. They're very thankful, and they're laying out, okay, we'll have some plainclothesmen outside, and we'll have our juvenile task force members inside. I enjoyed that. They've got long hair, and one has an earring.
Yeah.
And Nick is like, an earring? What?
Yeah. They got a Toronto mod squad here apparently on staff. I love it.
But
I do like how receptive the police are, and they don't waste time. And that's maybe a good thing about a half-hour show is they don't have to waste time with them, like having to convince the police that they really heard this. They're just like, okay, and they actually come out with a coherent plan and take it seriously and, devote quite a bit of resources actually to this. It's sort of refreshing that we don't have to go through like a whole rigmarole of, the mime trying to convince them that she's telling the truth or that it's a legitimate threat.
Especially if were doing it through mime.
Yes. She's not one of those totally committed to the gimmick mimes.
No.
She talks quite often, actually.
Yes. Now, the one wrinkle, though, is that they just have to call in the orders to headquarters and they'll set everything up, which to me suggested that maybe there's going to be a problem.
Mm-hmm.
That possibly the delay could cause it.
Yes.
Maybe that's not the most efficient. Back somewhere outside, the punks are talking, and I get because they're worried about the guy. They don't know about the mime. They decide to move up the time frame to 2 o'clock, which of course is not within the the time frame that the cops are. They expect them to be there at closing time. Hobo chases them off again, and then he finds the guy's hat and brings the hat to the mime. The cops want her to be back at 4. So he brings her the hat and leads her to the dumpster. And unfortunately, there's a truck picking up the dumpster. When they arrive, they decide to jump into the dumpster to help. Hobo somehow gets out. I think he goes to bark at the driver, which doesn't work. But now the mime and Terry are in this dumpster and they get hauled. I don't know if it's a landfill or just a beach where they're dumping dirt, but and Hobo, he manages to follow and at the same pace as a truck. And he barks at the driver, and the driver starts to dump the contents. So Hobo jumps in the cab. The driver got out to do whatever you do when you're dumping dirt out of a dumpster. I guess he's going to open the back gate of this thing. And Hobo jumps in the cab and starts pushing levers.
Yeah.
Manages to stop it. And then the mime, shouts. And we see the punks buying some monster masks. And then we go back, and the driver is yelling at these kids. They could have gotten hurt and everything. And he gets back to work, and then he almost dumps dirt on Terry again.
Right.
Hobo has to save him another time.
At this point, I've lost track of how many times Hobo has physically saved Terry from physical harm in this episode. This might be a record of ones that I've seen of Hobo saving the same individual repeatedly.
But the mime figures out that Terry's deaf.
Yeah, and I really like the dumpster driver, who's way over the top, just like totally aggrieved and, kind of lecturing them. And he just wants to dump dirt and trash into the ocean or whatever he does. And doesn't want any complications, but he threatens to call the cops on them.
Yes, especially from a mime, a deaf guy, and a dog. But
yeah,
And how's he going to explain
like
that? Listen, there was a mime, there was a guy, and this dog. The dog operated the truck. I swear.
And I like the fact that he threatens to call the cops on him, and the mime is like, "Yeah, would you please call the police?"
And he ignores that. What? So, but because the mime has figured out Terry's situation, she's able to communicate with him through the art of mime.
Yeah, right.
And he doesn't want to go to the cops. So Hobo picks up her bag again, and that gives her the idea that she'll give him. She calls it a mask, but put mime makeup on his face.
Mime him up.
And so then she's doing that, and he's holding up a mirror looking at. I believe Hobo sees the punks approaching in the mirror, and he runs at them and steals one of their masks, and they chase him, but then they give up. And he takes the mask into the arcade. Of course, no one notices him. Mm-hmm. The kid messing around and turns on the black lights, and Nick is yelling at that kid and tells him to go buy his own black light.
Yeah, he, physically removes him from the premises, doesn't he?
Yes, he does. It's my last day. I can do whatever I want.
Yeah, and you know what? Maybe now is as good a time as any to bring this up. What is Nick working like 8 to 5 or something like that? So he's open during the day when school's open, and then he closes shortly, right after school lets out.
I guess so. Yeah.
It seems like a questionable business model, but I guess he really cleans up in those 2 hours a day when people are actually there.
Yeah, hey, he's making $1,000 a day.
Yeah, that's right, all cash, baby.
I guess some truants or some college kids maybe fill out the day in between.
Yeah,
he doesn't have to buy. He doesn't have to serve food or anything.
Yeah, that's a good point.
There's a convenience store down the sidewalk.
One thing we don't see is a vending machine of cigarettes because
no.
And I'm not complaining about it, but I'll bet every arcade in 1985 probably had some kind of vending machine filled with packs of cigarettes.
And probably those ones that gave you a handful of evidence.
Yes. Oh, right.
Waste a quarter on a.
Yes, and let me say, and we haven't brought this up yet, which is a surprise considering the nature of the show. But for our 2 to 11-year-old demographic, let me state categorically that we at Bet All the Network shows do not at all support buying loose M&Ms out of vending machines. No. I just want to say that before, in case anybody misunderstood since we were talking about it.
So Hobo hands Nick the mask, and then there's a phone call from Detective Carver. Now Carver is the name of one of the other punk. So he wants Nick to clear the whole place out. Nick's like, well, okay, if you insist, I don't have any business. I'm not going to argue. And Hobo goes out, pokes his head out the door, and sees them at a payphone down the street. And he comes back in and he drops the mask at the back door. I wasn't 100% sure why he did that. I guess
No, I wasn't either.
he's propping the door open.
Yes, I think that's what it was, but
Yeah.
I totally missed that his intent there. But I believe that was a deliberate move by the hobo.
He sees everything.
Yeah.
So then we go back, and the mime is performing at a playground, I guess with Terry. Right?
Yes, he's kind of like
or is
the
Terry? He's helping out.
yes, he's harassing people for money.
Yeah.
While she's performing,
Right.
or he's passing around the hat.
Yeah, and these people seem to enjoy it.
Yeah.
I don't know if they gave him any money, but they seem to appreciate it. So Hobo takes Terry's hat again, and they follow him. And inside the arcade, Nick's locking up. He shuts off all the noises and the crazy light. And the punks knock, and then they barge in. And Hobo and the kids come in the back door. And Nick collapses and possibly having a heart attack.
Right. Now, I'm laughing because I'm not sure if this is legit or not, and I'm not sure if he's faking it or if he's really having some kind of distressing incident here.
Right. He seems to recover pretty well.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that he was doing a fake one.
Yeah. That's his move.
Yeah.
That he used to do that at the hardware store all the time when punks would come in and harass him. He'd fake a heart attack, and they would just get scared and run off.
Yeah, and if they didn't, he would pull a hammer off the bottom shelf and whack him on the foot. And the mime sneaks to a phone and calls the cops. And then Hobo, again showing his mechanical talents, shuts off all the lights. So then turns on the black light and the sound. And then the mime faces are glowing. It's pretty effective.
Mm-hmm.
Creepy thing. And the punks freak out. They do kind of beat up Terry again.
Yeah.
But the kids, they manage to tie a rope across the floor and trip them and then tie them up. And then the cops arrive.
And there's few places I'd less want to fall onto than an arcade floor in 1985. Although, to be fair, it looks pretty clean in this one.
Yeah. That's what Nick's doing from 5 to
9. Yeah.
He's vacuuming. Swearing about these kids.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But then we see them, and it's later sometime, and then the mime and Terry are performing in these different fancy costumes, sort of Renaissance kind of costumes, and Nick and Hobo are watching them, and Nick even gives out of a 1 out of 10, he gives them an 11.
He totally breaks the Leonard Maltin scale with that rating.
Yes. And he's a big fan of Spinal Tap.
Yeah.
People don't know that about Nick, but he saw that movie dozens of times in the theater.
Yes.
Yeah. We learn that Terry's now getting help from the city or the state. So he's learning sign language and lip reading. And Nick, who says he has trouble saying thank you, gives him an envelope of, I presume, cash. And then Hobo, in his traditional manner, just heads off. He's like Batman.
Yeah.
He's gone. And the mime and Terry blow him kisses, and then Nick's like, "What are you doing?" And they're like, "Oh, saying thank you." And even he blows them a kiss.
Yes.
So Hobo he's done so much here. He's stopped a crime. He's improved Terry's life by giving him a friend or maybe girlfriend, and also giving him help better function in society. And he's warmed an icy heart.
That's possibly the biggest accomplishment. And he's also boosted the mime's business.
Yeah.
And one thing I really like, one little touch he did, is I think he kind of at the end, before totally disappearing, he sort of lingers around and gives Nick a chance to complete his redemption by thanking him. He kind of waits around for the thank you, which he doesn't always do. Yeah. In this case, he intuited that Nick needed that to complete his ease into retirement. So another brilliant emotional intelligence by the Littlest Hobo.
Yes, his intuition is first rate, wherever it's coming from. And then guests of the Littlest Hobo stay at the Ramada Renaissance.
Maybe my favorite part of the episode. I was totally not expecting that. I hadn't seen that in any other episode. Guests of the Littlest Hobo.
Luxury hotel at non-luxury prices.
I was just going to say, I sure hope that Maury Amsterdam got to stay in that hotel when he visited the Little Hobo.
I hope so.
deserves a class joint like that.
Cars are supplied by Tilden, the only Canadian name in worldwide car rentals.
Yeah.
And then we get a theme song and credits. I
What
think
an
that some of
episode.
these too, previews of the next episode, which always seem to be the previous episode.
Wow, is that how they do things in Canada?
Yes. Yeah.
Canadian television previews the episode that you've already seen?
Yeah, the one you saw a week ago.
Yeah. That seems a little anticlimactic, but hey.
Batman was super good.
Yeah. I think we need some help from our Canadian friends on that one, because I don't understand that at all, but hey. This is a fantastic episode, but can we talk about the plan of these two hoods, these juvenile delinquents? So many things they do. For one thing, one of the guys, and I think Ted Dykstra may be this guy, and it's not Terry. So I'll try to narrow that down and clarify in the show notes. But one of these kids is wearing like a weird Saul Bass T-shirt with like this hypnotic spiral design.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say is it's very distinctive. And he doesn't bother changing his outfit the whole day.
Right.
Neither one of them do. And they plan to go back and rob, but yet they go to the trouble of buying masks, which they get from a local business that's maybe like a block away, in order to disguise themselves despite wearing the same clothes. When they're making the call, they don't. He identifies himself as Detective Carver using his real name. Mm-hmm. Not master criminals, not to minimize the role of Hobo in outwitting them, but, he maybe didn't have so far to go in this one.
Yeah, I think Ted Dykstra must be playing Carver, or possibly the other guy, Mitch. I can't tell.
So Carver and Mitch are the two criminals, would-be criminals.
Very long. Yeah, that one guy's shirt, though. Shirt, and doesn't he have a headband, too?
Yes, I believe so. And I think Laurie had to look away from his shirt a few times for fear of getting like a headache or something.
Good thing he wasn't inside the arcade much.
Yeah.
With all those lights and everything.
Oh, that would definitely be cause for a disclaimer.
Maybe Nick just had a seizure.
That could be.
After 3 years of working in that arcade.
Yeah, and then it's funny because they recover, and then when the cops come in, they give that thumbs up in unison.
Yes.
Kind of to the camera. That great shot of all three of them grinning and giving a thumbs up. So it's like, right. Okay, Nick's okay, but. Well, he's clearly in a better emotional place at the end of the episode, no matter his physical condition. And he said he's going to Phoenix, Arizona, which I really like that detail, by the way. They're that specific. Not just that he's going to the States, but I'm assuming that the dry air and the climate will be good for him down there.
His daughter's swimming pool.
That's right, yeah.
Sounds like the life.
I'll bet his daughter will be very happy at the transformation. If this sticks, I have a feeling life's going to be a lot more pleasant with this Nick than it would have been with the other Nick, who's coming to stay with her for an extended period of time.
Being cranky about everything.
Yeah.
And when she asks, he can explain again. Well, there was a mime, deaf boy, and a dog.
Yeah.
Okay, Dad. Yeah, maybe he's going to become a snowbird. Spend his winters in Arizona.
Yeah, could see that.
Most of his time in Toronto, helping his mime friends.
That makes sense.
That'll be his next business project. He'll come out of retirement to open a mime.
That's going to be the next big thing. The mime renaissance in Toronto is underway.
Right next to the second city.
Yeah. Well, it's a shame because kids used to love mime before video games came along and stole their attention spans and everything.
I know. Yeah. Watching someone pretend to be stuck in a box.
Yeah.
It was almost as exciting as blowing up asteroids.
Yeah. Now, that reminds me. I was trying to see what game was Terry was playing. I'm thinking that was maybe a made-up game, but it looked like it was maybe Blaster or something.
Yeah.
Did you recognize that? Because we see some real games, like I think Space Invaders is seen.
I think it was, looking up here, there was a game, Blaster. I think it was Blaster, which I don't remember ever seeing, but it looked pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I don't think this show is the kind that would have the budget to, fake some graphics.
Do you think they bothered?
His head intentionally seemed to cover up.
Yes.
Some of the letter.
Yeah, I was wondering if they had gotten clearance on showing these games or whatever if CTV Legal cleared it, but I don't know if that happened or not.
Actually, the game he was playing looked a lot cooler in this game.
I mean, I did like the look at sort of mid-1980s arcade culture, although it's very tightly shot and we don't see as much of it as I would like. But we got to see some kids huddled around video games, and that's a big part of the 1980s. So I'm glad we got to see some of that.
I don't know if we've really had much other than the video games at the Stratton house.
Yeah, I've certainly seen some video game themed episodes of other shows that we've covered, but I don't know if we've actually brought video games as much into the BOTNS universe until this episode. So thank you, Hobo.
Yes, you've done.
He's
your
enriched
job
our
again.
lives.
I'd like to think he's still out there, an immortal dog.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess maybe that was what was going on Corner Gas.
Yeah, I believe they actually played the theme song at the end of that Corner Gas episode too. So.
Well, I'll put it on the list.
Yeah.
If I ever watch, I have seen episodes.
Yeah. Well,
if I
this
ever
would
watch
be
another episode.
This would be a bigger transformation than Nick in this one if you actually started watching Corner Gas at this point.
Yeah. I don't know. How long do I keep it going? Yeah.
You're only hurting yourself, Mike.
I know. Any other thoughts?
Well, I would love to hear from somebody that did grow up on or watch the show, because I think the one thing, we can sort of watch it from a distance, but we don't really know what it was like. The show seemed to have left a big impression on everybody that watched it, just looking at comments on videos that were posted and people talking about the show. I didn't see a whole lot of information about the production of Littlest Hobo, but so I'm curious about, just as a cultural thing, like how big was it in Canada, and was it as much an institution as it seems to have been, that kind of thing. I'd kind of like to know more about it. But
yeah, I'll say at this point, pretty much every time there's a shot of him, it was a little bit like the Grogu effect, the Mandalorian. It just made me feel good.
Yeah.
Made me smile.
I think there's something to that.
Yeah. I think a beautiful dog. Apparently, German Shepherd experts don't consider that good breeding to have his face, the light part of his face underneath, and the dark part. The mask is dark or reversed or something. Mm-hmm. That's not cool. But you know what? He's a pretty dog.
I agree. Yeah.
That dog in your neighborhood agrees.
Yes.
Your building.
Yeah, it's an interesting show, and it's fun to see a show produced in Canada that is trying to be set in Canada.
Yes.
It isn't pretending to be American.
Right. Yeah. If I ever go to Toronto, I think I'll stay at the Ramada Renaissance.
I hear good things about it.
All right. Well, I think that does it for this episode. Time for us to hit the road.
Yeah, I think we're off to wander, and who knows where we'll turn up tomorrow, Mike, but
right.
We got to hit the road.
This episode brought to you by Nick's Arcade. Why don't you get out of here and go spend your money somewhere else, you darn kids. This episode also brought to you by Mime, the people's language. This episode also brought to you by the committee to get Mike to watch Corner Gas. Join us next time for another exciting episode of Battle of the Network Shows. Learn more, leave feedback, and suggest future episodes at battleofthenetworkshows.com. Follow us on Twitter at BatNetShows, and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/battleofthenetworkshows.